Welcome back to another installment of the SDS2.NET API code-along series. After today, our application will be nearly complete. Today we are creating the user interface to the drawing section of our application. Without wasting another second, let's dive into this.
To get started with our user interface for our drawings, we'll first need to go to our drawings.xaml. From there, we can go into our grid. Now, the user interface UI design pattern that we will be using for this will be called master detail. This is where we're going to have a master list of all of our drawings on one side. Then on the other side, we're going to have all the details of the selected drawing. So to get started with our grid, we're going to want to add two columns. So say grid dot column definitions. Say column definition. We'll say width is equal to, let's just start out with 150, see where that goes. Then we'll say column definition width of stars. That way it eats up the rest of the space. 150 is actually probably way too small, so let's just make that 350. Alright, we can always adjust it from there. In the very first column, we are going to want to add a dock panel. Inside this dock panel, we are going to want to have a text box. So this text box is going to be our search bar. So let's say x name equals search bar. Let's say text is equal to search. Height will be equal to 30. Dock panel dot dock. We'll say top. Also in our dock panel, we want to say last child fill equals true. That just causes UI elements to stretch. Our second item that we'll be adding will be a scroll viewer. Inside the scroll viewer, we will be having a list view. So this list view will be the one that will display all of our categories. Then inside of that list view, we will then have another list view that shows all of the drawings. So when I'll say list view dot item template, we'll say data template. We'll say this will be another list view. So inside this list view, we'll also need to create an item template for it too. So data template. For our data template here, we'll just say text block, and we'll just say text. Currently, we'll just equal test. Right, so this is the main layout of our master side of things. And so let's go ahead and start filling in some of our properties so that way we can start testing this. So let's go over to our drawings.xaml.cs, and we'll need to add a few properties. Okay, so the very first collection we'll want to set will be our observable collections of drawing categories called filtered categories. So we'll say private observable collection, control dot, using systems.collections.object model. We'll say this drawing category. Filtered categories. I'll say public observable collection drawing category. Alright, so our getter will just return our filtered categories. Then our setter, like all of our other properties that we've been setting this way, will return if the value is equal to filtered categories. This is just so that way we don't trigger any unnecessary UI work. Then we will raise property changed, name of filtered categories. Let's go ahead and implement the iNotify property changed interface. Using system.component model, then control dot again to get the default implementation. We'll take that event, and then we will cut it, put it at the bottom, and we'll say private raise property changed, takes in a string prop, and then, whoops, then if the property changed event is not null, we will invoke it. Now we have our collection for filtered categories. Now we need to have our list of master categories. So we want to create a private backing field once again. This time it'll just be a list. Public list drawing category. So for our getter, once again, we will just be returning our backing field. And then in our setter, if value is equal to our backing field, we will just return. Otherwise, our backing field will equal value, which is something we forgot to do up here. Perfect. And then we will also want to call filter categories the method. So I'll just call the method be filter items. We'll pass in a value. We don't need to pass in value. So let's create our method filter items. Go ahead and let's just collapse get drawings. We'll say private void filter items. Alright, so before we actually implement this method, let's just create a short circuit hack to make sure that all of our UI bindings and everything is working, and then we'll come back and we'll tidy up this method. So here we'll just say filtered categories is equal to categories. Of course we can't do that, so we have to say new observable collection, and we paste in our categories. There we go. Alright, so it looks like we have all of our properties enough to do our UI. So let's go back to our drawings.saml. So in the very first list view, we're going to say item source equal to binding, and this is going to be our filtered categories. Now inside of our second list view, we're going to say item source is equal to binding, and this is going to be drawings, because by the time we're at this list view, we're already inside of a filtered category. And then we want to add a name on our grid. Then we'll go back to our code behind here, and we will set its data context. Say grid.dataContext is equal to this. And we're setting our data context this way because we're in a user control. I believe that is all we need to start testing. So make sure we're running in 64-bit and hit start. Ooh, compilation error. What did I forget? Ah, one parenthesis. This needs to be prop. There we go. And let's just do Control-Shift-B to do a build. Everything built, we're good to go. Now we can run. Okay, so we'll change our drop down. We'll select our job. We go to drawings. We don't see anything in our user interface. Ah, I see what we did wrong. So we actually never populated our filtered drawings. Alright, so we want to go to get drawings. At the bottom of this method, we will then say categories is equal to temp. So now when categories gets filled, we'll automatically filter our items and we'll be good to go. So we'll hit F5, run again, change our drop down, go to our drawings. Perfect. So we just see test, test, test. Alright, so it looks like our user interface is populating. That's great. So let's go ahead back to our UI. Let's fix it up just a little bit. So inside our data template, I know we just said list view. And that's really great, but the doesn't lead for the best user experience. So let's just cut that out for a second. And let's add an expander. Now the content of the expander will be that list view. And then we can make the header of our expander, and we can bind that to be the name of our filtered category. And the text block, the text can be then bound to the name of our drawings. So we hit F5. So let's go ahead and change our dropdown to our job. And go back to our drawings UI. We see that we have detail sheet, direction sheet, and gather sheet. Perfect. Then we have our drawings 1 through 8, direction E1 through E4, and our gather sheet of A1 through W29. So sweet, it looks like our user interface is working quite well. So now we need to be able to implement our search functionality. So go back to our user interface, we'll go up to our text box, and then we want to say that on text changed, say create a new event for us. So on text changed, all I want to do is call filter categories text box. We will need to wrap, oh gosh, we will need to wrap that in another set of parentheses so that way we can cast it efficiently. And there we go. And then our filter items, we're now going to be passing a string text into it. And we'll just go ahead and default that out to empty string. So that way we don't necessarily need to have it every time. And not call it filtered categories, we're going to call it filter items. All right, let's go ahead and implement our filtering method. So the first thing we want to check to see if text is equal to null or empty string. So we'll say if string is null or empty text, we will just want to assign filter categories to categories. So we'll cut that, paste it in here. Perfect. Now else, we want to check to see if categories is null. So if our categories is not null, then we'll want to go to and actually search and filter through our categories. Now odds are we'll want to be searching on the drawing name instead of the category name, and so that's what we're going to search through. So the first thing we want to do is set up a dictionary. This is going to be a dictionary that's going to hold all of our search results. So we want to be int and manage drawing equal to new dictionary. Then now we'll say for each drawing category in categories. And now I want to search through all my drawings. So for each manage drawing, md and dc.drawings. And then if md.name.toLower.contains text. Alright, and so I don't want to call toLower on text every single time. So I'm just going to reassign text down here to equal text.toLower. So if the drawing name contains our text, we want to see if our temp dictionary contains the key of our drawing category.id. If it does, then we can just say temp dict dot subdc.id dot add. Then we can add in our managed drawing. Oh, I just said a managed drawing. That was my mistake. It needs to be a list inside our dictionary. If the ID of the drawing category doesn't exist, we'll need to add it. So else, say temp dict.add. This will be our dc.id, comma new list. Then we will initialize this list to contain the current drawing. So now that we are storing all of our drawings inside our dictionaries, we're going to want to create all of our new items here. So we'll say list of drawing category temp is equal to new. So now we can say for each key value pair integer list managed drawing bkvp in temp dict. Now we can start creating everything. So now we'll say drawing category DC is equal to new drawing category. And then we'll also want to grab a drawing category out of our categories list. So we're saying drawing category original is equal to categories dot first or default. And we'll want to say x such that x dot id is equal to kvp dot key. And then we'll want to check to make sure that the original is not null. So as long as the original isn't null, then we know that we have a record and we can use it. So we'll say DC, so its ID is going to equal to org.id. Its name will be equal to org.name. And then its drawings will be equal to key value pair dot value. So the reason why we are creating this drawing category instead of just grabbing the original and reassigning the drawings list is that we don't want to overwrite that original list. So now we can say temp.add DC, and outside this for each loop, we can say filtered categories equals new observable collection temp. Alright, let's go ahead and hit F5. We'll change our drop down. Then we'll go to our drawings tab. So here, if I go ahead, take out the search, hit 1, we can see we get 1 on there, E1, A1, A10, P1. If I switch this out to A1, we just get our gather sheets. And if I have no text in here, we should have all of our drawings, which looks like we do. Perfect, so now all we need to do is implement our master detail. Alright, so we can go ahead and we close up our filter items, close up our get drawings, and now we will want to add another private field. So we'll say private manage drawing selected drawing, and public manage drawing selected drawing. So the getter, per the usual, will just return the private backing field. And then the setter will say if value is equal to selected drawing, return. Otherwise, we'll set this selected drawing equal to value. Then we'll raise property changed event, name of selected drawing. Take our selected drawing, then we'll go to our drawings.saml. Now we'll want to go to the enter list view, the inner list view. And there we want to say that selected item is equal to binding path will be equal to data context dot selected drawing. I'll say element name is equal to grid. So if you remember, we named our grid up here grid. So the data context of this list view is going to be a filtered category, just one of them. So like erection detail. Well, erection detail, one of our drawing categories, doesn't have a selected drawing path, but our window does. So here we're just saying, hey, look at the data context of our grid element and get it selected drawing. And just to test this really fast, let's go ahead and let's add a label. We'll say content, say binding selected drawing dot name. And we'll say grid.column equals 1. So now when we select a drawing, we should see a label pop up on the other side telling us what our name is. So we change our drawings, then we go here, and then when we select one, we see a 1 there on the other side, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's implement our master detail. So when I am working on a detailed view of one of my models, I like to go to that model and I like to copy out all the properties that I will be working with, so that way I can have a cheat sheet. So we'll go back to drawings.saml. We can paste it in here and then just highlight, do a Control KC, or you can just manually add an XML comment by adding that notation on the beginning. So a open angle, bang, dash, dash, and then dash, dash, close angle. So now that we have our cheat sheet in place, let's go ahead and expand this up a little bit so we can see some more. Now we are going to want to have a grid. I want to say column is equal to 1, grid dot row definitions. All right, so we're going to need 1, 2, so we're going to need a total of 10 rows. So we're going to say row definition height is equal to auto 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the very last row, we're going to want that to be height of star. And now we're also going to need 2 columns. Width of auto. And then we'll also do a column definition, width of star to eat up the rest of that space. So I'm just going to collapse these down so I can see a little bit more what I'm doing. Perfect. So we're going to want to have a label in one of our columns, and then we want to have a date picker in the other column. So here I'll say label grid dot rows equal to 0, content detail frozen date. We'll go ahead, we'll insert some spaces to make that look nice. And then we'll close that out. And then we'll have a date picker, grid dot rows equal to 0, grid dot columns equal to 1, a selected date is equal to binding, and this would be the selected drawing dot detail frozen date. Okay, so we need to copy this like 9 times and place that back. So I will see you in just a moment. I've gone through, as you can tell through the UI, I've added all the rest of my dates along with their labels. So all we did was copy from our cheat sheet all of our dates that we were going to be modifying, updated the content and the rows that they live on. The very last item we need to add will be a button. So this will be grid dot row, this will be 9. Grid dot column 1, content will be update, width will be 80, height will be 30, vertical alignment will be top. That looks fine in the center. Then let's just give it a margin of 10. Alright, so that's looking good. So we're not going to be implementing the click method for that in this video. We'll be doing that one in the next when we talk about transactions. So make sure you subscribe and ring the bell to get those updates. All right, so now that we have all this populating well, we are going to want to test it. And so let's hit F5 or click the start button. We will then want to change our dropdown, go to our drawings, and if we select a drawing, we really shouldn't. So in our case, none of these dates have changed. And so we won't really see that they're changing at this point. But in the next video, when we get to updating, we will see this UI start to update and change.
Now that our user interface is complete for our application, we have a little bit left to implement. Next time we'll be covering transactions and creating updates to our SDS2 model. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.